WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. We want to thank you for being with us today. We're coming to you today from Star Communications Channel 16. Also, WCLN Radio airs this show, and there's a summation in the Sampson Weekly newspaper, so you got kind of three opportunities here to connect with us. Also, the show is uploaded to YouTube about a week or so after the show airs on the radio and TV channel. So kind of look for that. If you see somebody who wants to know what we were talking about or what today's show was about, they can always go to YouTube and pull it up. Today we're talking about state government. We're talking about the Assembly in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're talking with John R. Bell IV, who happens to be in the North Carolina House. And probably most importantly, John, you're the majority leader in the House of Representatives. It's not like you took on a job, but you decided to straddle one of the horses in there that runs the fastest. And I want to start the show with thanking you for the service of committing yourself and doing what you do for this community and for the state.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. So the majority leader role is a little different. First of all, you run for office and you get elected by, in a state house district's around 80 plus or minus 1,000 people. And we have 120 of those in the state. Then your caucus has their leadership elections, and I was elected the head of the Republican caucus, which is a majority. So I work in conjunction with the minority leader, who's Representative Darian Jackson out of Wake County, and then also work in conjunction with the speaker to make sure that we've got the ebbs and flows of business going on in the House. So you have to. My job is not only to represent my area, which is a large portion of Wayne County, all of Greene County, and a small piece of Johnston County, but also to make sure that the 64 other Republicans are successful in their representation as well, and then going through the state budget process. So it can be very time consuming. It can be very stressful. It can be a lot of fun. All your emotions wrapped up in one is exactly what the position is. People say it's herding cats. When we talk to Rotary, I call it a wheelbarrow full of frogs. Yeah. trying to, if you imagine it's a wheelbarrow full of frogs, and you're trying to go from point A to point B and keep everybody calm, collective, and everybody in the wheelbarrow. Yeah. That's what it's like. But I'm in my second full term as majority leader. I had a piece of a term 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now. But it's been a wonderful experience, and I'm greatly honored. And not only do you get elected by the citizens to represent you, but your colleagues have enough faith in you that they'll elect you to a leadership position. That's pretty huge.
That's pretty huge. The fact that you've reached that point. Let me ask you this question, because you graduated from high school in Duplin County.
I did, North Duplin High School.
North Duplin. And you also graduated from University of North Carolina in Wilmington. And you're also an Eagle Scout.
Yes, sir.
When in that journey, just in that early years journey, did you have any idea, number one, that you were interested in the political world? And number two, would you ever imagine that we would be sitting here today talking about your role as majority leader in the House of Representatives?
No, I never thought any of this was going to happen.
How did that come about?
That's the beautiful thing about life, is you never know what's coming next. But of course, growing up in the Boy Scouts and being through the whole Cub Scout process and in the Boy Scouts, you learn the value of leadership, you learn structure, you learn communication. Sometimes you learn the hard way of things that don't work, and you learn the good way of some things that do work. And so I was very blessed to have that opportunity to go through the scouting program, which I encourage everybody to do because it is a great program. But it's actually a really weird story. It's just like in the movies, kind of.
Maybe we can make a movie.
Yeah. So maybe nobody would watch it. Probably me.
You might be surprised.
But I got involved in the local party and tried to help them as far as trying to bring young people into the party there in Wayne County, and got active there. In 2007, I helped Representative Efton Sager. At the time, he was a county commissioner, was going to run for the state house. And we talked, and I said, Mr. Sager, I've never run a campaign before. And he said, well, I've never run for the House before. So we'll just figure it out together. Yeah. And we did. Yeah. And we were successful in 2008. And then at the time, Senator Pate had vacated that House seat and was running for the state Senate. And so I helped him in 2010. And we were successful in that endeavor. And I said, I may have a little side business to start here running campaigns and doing that, because I enjoyed the political process. And I got a phone call from some folks and said, look, we got this House seat and we're not happy with the representation. Would you be willing to sit down and talk with us about what it would look like to run a campaign? I said, sure, absolutely. So I actually went to a cabin in the woods outside of Snow Hill. Seriously, believe it or not. and there was a
by
tape,
yourself?
Well, yeah, by myself. Here I am. I got my notebooks and stuff. I come in, and I knew a number of the people that were going to be there. And we sat around the table and broke down this plan. And it was people from a couple different counties. And they said, well, this is great. Do you have a candidate? And I said, well, no, that's what y'all are supposed to do. And they said, well, why don't you run? I said, y'all are crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why would I do that?
You were okay in the background.
Why would I do that? I'm doing what I enjoy doing. I've got a career over here. At the time, I'd been married for about a year. The timing was great because we had bought a new house. Just everything. And they're like, well, just think about it. And so I went home and talked to my wife about it, talked to my family about it. My grandmother, who's passed away now, told me, she said, son, I love you and I'll support you, but are you sure about this?
Yeah,
So we talked through it. And we prayed about it, and at the end of the day, I looked at my wife and I said, look, if I do it and win, good things will happen. If I do it and lose, I got an opportunity to meet a lot of people throughout Eastern North Carolina on the campaign trail. And so we took a shot, and we ran, and at the end of the day, we were victorious by 39 votes.
39 votes.
39
Not 39%, but 39.
39 votes. And so I went through on election night, it was 54, I believe, and then after recount and after provisional ballots get casted, it was 39 votes. And now at the time, the district was 4 counties, Wayne, Green, Lenore, and Craven. And I had unseated the incumbent, and I had to go through a residency challenge on top of that. So every attempt was made to solidify the election. And we won the primary, then went on, I think we took 60+% of the general election, and that's what started it. And then I went to Raleigh and was completely lost. Yeah,
I was going to ask you, what was that that first day you walked into General Assembly? I mean,
the first day I walked in, I was like, man, this is there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
And then you sit down and you realize the responsibility that you have, because 80,000+ people in 4 counties just put you in office to represent their interest.
Yeah.
And being from Eastern North Carolina, it's not just one of us. We have to unite together to work. And then on top of that, being from a rural district, we have to even more so. Even more so. So you kind of weigh that responsibility. And I'm 40 years old, so I was pretty fresh and young 8 years ago. And you're just like, wow. And so I went into work and got busy and tried to find my way around the building, not get lost, find out where committee rooms are, because that's confusing, because on this side of the committee room is numbered this way, the back door is numbered a different way, so you could walk into the wrong committee room and embarrass yourself, which still happens today, to be honest.
I was just going to say, every time I'm up there, I'm confused.
And you had to find a bathroom, that's around another corner. I'll never forget, it was a good friend of mine who he came up to visit, and we were walking through, and I was giving him a tour of the building. And I said, well, let's go down to the parking deck and then we'll go grab something to eat. And so we walked down the stairs and I opened the door. And I looked down and I said, and this is the loading dock and garbage disposal area. So if you need to dump your trash off, it's right here. And we had to turn and walk back upstairs. And he said, you played it off well. I was like, I have no clue where I'm at right now. I'm lost. But those things happen. But just the weight of responsibility. Then you look at the history aspect of it.
Oh yeah, tremendous history.
You look at a number of members on both sides of the aisle that have been long time staples in politics, and you look at Leo Daughtry was there when I first got in there. Tom Tillis, who's now our U.S. Senator, was Speaker of the House. Mickey Michaud on the Democrat side served, I believe,
35. It was on up there.
35, 36 years.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at all this history in the building, and then you got to learn the process, because from day one, people start calling saying, hey, we need help with this, and can you help us with this? And I hired a great legislative assistant that had experience there, and we hit the ground running, and we hadn't stopped.
When you look back at that beginning, and you gave a good summation for that, because trust me, I've been up there enough, I still get lost. I'm like, where am I going? But what's changed? It seems that some things, this is your 4th term, right? But from that period of time to now, there's been a lot of changes, not only in the expectation, seems like, of people, but in the capability and the capacity to get something done, to get those frogs moved. It just seems to be, from the outside looking in, a more agitated environment.
Well, unfortunately, because of, and these are all great things, but you look at social media and access and everything, they're all great things to communicate. But you look at what's happening now. When you step out there and run for office, you're thoroughly vetted. People are looking at everything you've done, even back when you were 18, 19 years old, and so there's a lot of scrutiny. So that prevents some people from running to begin with.
And all of us like to turn off part of those channels.
Exactly. So it's hard. It's hard in some places. Hard to recruit good candidates. So that hurts. But also, we're in an environment now to where it's very polarizing. We have extremes. Sometimes on both sides of the aisle, but what we try to do is try to work through that and find ways that we can move forward. And what you see on TV is really about 10% of what actually goes on.
Exactly.
90% of what we do in Raleigh is bipartisan and has a lot of bipartisan support. It's just that 10% that makes the newspapers. Of course, with the protest and the people advocating, that's a beautiful thing, but also it can be stressful if you're on the receiving end of that. But politics is a very tough environment. It's very cutthroat. But I try to navigate through that, and in the day, my job is to represent my community and do what's best for them.
I want to, when we come back, I want to touch a little bit more on some ways that we come together to make policy and understand policy. Then I want to get into some of the things that you're involved in, some of the committees you're on, and talk about some things that are impacting the rural areas here and where you see us going. Maybe kind of your vision of where you hope, using your terms here, to try to get those frogs headed in that way. And I realize, having been up there a number of times, and we've been up and taped some shows up there, it is. You look at it on the outside and it's chaos, but in the core of it, in that melting zone, things are happening. So we'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking to Representative John R. Bell IV, who is the majority leader in the House right here in North Carolina. Stay tuned. Call a friend. We're going to be talking about some things going on in the legislature that will ultimately impact you.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. The communications for this show, email weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. That brings information directly from you to us about shows we've had, shows you want us to do, subjects that you would like us to explore and look into, people you want us to talk to about something. We'll be glad to look at that as well. Let us know what you think. We're constantly driven by the passion of the people. One of those people that has done that now for 4 terms is Representative John Bell, and I always say John R. Bell IV so people know, because there's another John Bell that I knew that was in a commissioner.
Yeah, we got Commissioner John Bell in
exactly.
Wayne County.
Exactly.
And then of course, you had Representative Larry Bell, who represented this area well.
Exactly.
It was one bill. It was years ago, and there was all for and 2 against. And I looked on the board, and it was me and Larry. And so after the session, I said, "Well, the Bell brothers stood strong today, didn't we?"
He's a great guy.
I tell you what, he represented his community well. He always found ways to make things happen.
He did.
And it was an honor to work with him, but it was also a pleasure to work with him.
He was he was and still is, when he's ready to talk, a frequent person on this show. And as you said, he had a huge heart. Superintendent of schools, had
First class.
Tremendous background.
First class.
When we look at this whole legislative thing, though, Representative Bell, we see a lot of activity. As you mentioned a while ago, we see protests about this. We see pushback about other subjects. We see people just literally getting into a frenzy. As you mentioned, work is still going on. As we're sitting here today, and I'm sure your mind is already somewhere where you need to be because you got so many things going on. What is the top hottest issue right now you see sitting there as majority leader in the House of Representatives? I got a bunch I think is, but I want to know what you see.
The biggest issue we tackle and the biggest bill we tackle every session is the state budget. Currently we have a $24 billion budget that we put forward that passed the House in bipartisan fashion and went to the Senate, passed there in bipartisan fashion, came back over to the House for concurrence. We rejected that, and then we got together and developed what is the state budget today. That passed both chambers with bipartisan support. The governor vetoed it, and now we either have to override the veto or figure out an agreement on how we move forward. So we've been working through the process on identifying issues that we can work with our Democrat colleagues across the aisle on. We've been navigating through those channels to try to get a budget done because right now we're in a stalemate. So we have not taken a vote to override the veto. We're hoping that some more colleagues on the Democrat side will come on board with us to do that, to put forth a really good budget for the state. The good thing that we've done, which is the reason why people aren't screaming and yelling at this point, is 3 years ago we put forth a continuing resolution in our budget. So unlike what happens in Washington or what has happened in the past in North Carolina, if we cannot come to an agreement on the budget at the end of the fiscal year, which is July 1st, July 1st starts a new fiscal year, the budget will continue to move on under last year's budget.
Right.
Which is a great thing. That way you avoid the government shutdown. You avoid those issues like you see, people see happen in Washington. So we've avoided that, which I think was very smart on our part to do that. Now as we get into a new school year, the new funding, teacher raises, state employee raises, those type of things, people won't see those. That's why it's really important for us
It'll be status quo until that budget is approved.
It's status quo. Also, in our state budget, there's a lot of local infrastructure projects that have been put in there, which are really crucial to helping some of our smaller towns and cities, and also some of our larger ones move forward. So they will not see those move forward, but at least right now, you have status quo under 2018-19 budget, and we won't have a government shutdown.
The sad kind of thing that for folks to understand, though, in that budget, there was a lot of local government funds that or money headed to local governments that they will not recognize so that budget is approved, and some of those were schools.
So we put forth, and there's different ways to look at this, and we took on a bond bill in the House and passed it, and anytime we can do capital funding for schools, I'm going to support it. The Senate didn't like it. They wanted a pay-as-you-go system. We actually had a member in our caucus develop kind of a hybrid type pay-as-you-go system, and I like that one as well. But in the day, we came up with a SCIF fund, which allowed us to infuse right then and there, once the budget's passed, dollars into our local counties. Sampson County benefited because, of course, you have two school systems here. You have the Clinton City schools and then the county schools. So I have to go back and look at the amount of dollars, but you're looking at a minimum of $10 million infused in cash directly in to start looking at some of these school construction projects, repair renovation projects. That's addition to the dollars they would receive regularly through the state budget process. Also, then you factor in the local projects that representatives, each one of the representatives and senators worked on. I know just down the road in Mount Olive, there was a very crucial infrastructure project that dealt with their water and sewer treatment facility. Correct. It's $5.5 million tied in with that one, because without that, Mount Olive Pickle suffers, University of Mount Olive suffers, and the town can't grow. So there's projects like that spread out through all the state, and that's why it's important to get this budget done. And
you mentioned sewer. I want to segue very quickly because I had an article here that I was looking at regards to the town of Eureka. One of the things that you talked about, the state auditor talked about, another number of other folks, but it was kind of surprising to me. There's a number of municipalities and counties, local governments, that are suffering to the point that there may need to be intercession by the state to actually stabilize them to be able to just pay the sewer bill. So
the Eureka article you mentioned, and I skimmed through that actually today, is really on how, as a state, we feel like we can address some of these issues. So Eureka is in the northern part of Wayne County. I represent Eureka. This is something we've been working on for 7 years, if not even before I got there to General Assembly.
About 200 or 300 folks.
We knew this was going to happen, just did not know when. And with the heavy rains that we had earlier, I believe earlier in the year and last year, it just became so much infiltration was going through their system. They couldn't pay their bill to Fremont, which is where their water drains into. Well, the town of Fremont treats what they have to treat, and they send it into Goldsboro. So I've got the town of Eureka, which is having financial troubles, can't afford to pay that bill. Sends their stuff to Fremont. Well, Fremont can't subsidize Eureka and maintain what they have, so now they get in a situation, and then they owe Goldsboro the rest. So Goldsboro starts saying, hey, we can't subsidize both these towns.
Domino effect.
So and then you've got dilapidated infrastructure, crumbling infrastructure, pumps that are just not working, and how do you address this? So one of the provisions we put into the budget is identify the dollars that can fix this system, develop a regional water system, and in that way you actually have new infrastructure in place. Hopefully, at the end of the day, it will lower or at least steady rates within those areas, and allow these towns to look at growing instead of having to spend every dollar they take in on water and sewer infrastructure. So if this plan works, it will be. The problem is this is the first plan we've ever put together. The good thing is it's the first plan. The bad thing is it's the first plan. So we're hoping that it works. But what we're hoping to do is develop these regional water infrastructures and implement them across the state into towns, little small towns that this is happening to, because unfortunately Eureka was at top of the list, but there's a whole list of towns throughout our state that are in the same situation.
And it's a critical asset. I guess you could look at two things that I've always thought was critical assets. One of them obviously is water. You got to have clean water. The next thing we would look at, and I think we would all agree, would be electricity. As we've kind of become accustomed to that. So with that, if that becomes a model, do you see that something that at some point in time you could say to counties or small towns, and and I know we're literally inundated with small towns, and is that something you see happening where they'll just say, well, where do I fill out this form to get some assistance?
What we'll do is put them on a priority list on how they, who's number one. Unfortunately, Eureka moved up to number one.
Absolutely.
So we'll put them on a priority list. We'll look at what needs to happen. And when we're doing this, we're not just coming in and putting a system in place. Yeah. We're looking, hey, maybe septic tanks in this area is the way to go. Exactly. And so we're looking at ways to stop putting Band-Aids on issues and actually fixing the issues. And because of the responsible spending and responsible budgeting we've done in our tax reforms, now we have this non-recurring dollars, and we're able to actually start doing these projects across the state. So it's an exciting time for rural North Carolina, because we actually have the funding to help our small towns throughout the state actually address these issues and stop putting Band-Aids on them.
And that within itself being a model could be used whether it's the western part of the state, eastern part of the state,
all throughout the state.
Exactly. The majority of this state is rural.
Yeah,
you've got the Raleighs, Greensboro, Charlottes, those kinds of things. Even Goldsboro is considered a fairly large city, or Fayetteville, but at the same time, they've got to have that resource there.
Correct.
Okay, so I want to segue, and I'm kind of hedging a little bit before I segue from that to another subject. So I want to touch on this while I'm in the segue. Alcohol beverage control, you're on that commission.
So I'm actually on every committee in the House.
I was just fixing to say, you got them all. I've got them all listed here. I'm thinking, there's not one you're not on.
That is one of the benefits and curses about being on.
And you get to vote. You get to vote.
I do. I'm what we call a floater.
Exactly.
So you have myself, the deputy majority leader, our speaker pro tem, and then our rules chair. The four of us float in and out of committees.
So Tim Moore basically says what's going on today.
Well,
kind of, sort of.
No, the committee chair calls and says, hey, this bill's having some problems. Can you come in?
Yeah.
Or, hey, this is going really bad. Can you come in and either vote up or down, or work with us to get it done? And so we try to address those issues.
And that's the part I wanted to get to on that, is that when you move around in the House, when you walk through, there's a reason for you to be there most of the time, because you can't be everywhere.
You can't be everywhere. It's kind of funny because sometimes you walk in, and
go,
they're in the middle of discussion, you walk in and you see people go, really?
Exactly.
But we're there to try to move legislation forward and try to work through the process, and the committee process is where the work is done.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that everything dealing with legislation is handled before it gets to that floor vote.
We're going to go to a quick break, and I'm going to come back. When I come back, I'm going to kind of set the scene here so you'll know what I want to talk about. It's something that I'm sure you've been inundated with, but I want to segue from sewer to broadband,
right,
and talk about that. That's a big subject that, as you know, in rural areas has been inundated with everything from D.C. to local level to committees and so forth. But ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Representative John R. Bell IV, who is the majority leader in the House, talking about some of the things he's involved in each and every day. So when you call him, just understand he might not be where you think he is. We'll be back in a moment.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. We're kind of halfway to the show today. We're talking about, yes, we're talking about politics. Yes, we're talking about the General Assembly. We're talking about things that are happening there today that's impacting your life, things you need to know about. And we're talking about a person that's involved, I'd probably say on the House side, just about all of them, John Bell. And Representative Bell, for just kind of a little brief backup on introduction, a lot of folks probably remember you being right here in Clinton, being involved with the Rotary Club, being part of this community. You've ended up in another place now, and in that district that you're serving, particularly in District 10, which, as you mentioned, Greene, Johnson, parts of Wayne County. It's the same people. It's the same kinds of needs.
It's the same rural community. Agriculture is our number one driving engine. The difference is I have a little more military component, but you feel that between Seymour Johnson on one side of Sampson County and Fort Bragg on the other. But no, I right out of college, after I graduated UNCW, I was looking for a job opportunity, and I got an opportunity to come work with the Boy Scouts of America. Lived right here in Clinton, in old Sir Clinton Apartments, right there on 403. And and so still have family over here today. And when we get over here and see them from time to time, I come in and do some, I call it retail therapy with my wife and daughter from time to time here in Clinton. So,
well, absolutely. We appreciate that. And anytime you're in this area, stop by and see us. We always invite people to come in. I want to touch on this thing is something that deals with technology. Technology is changing so radically. You know this. I just got through talking with some folks with the North Carolina Healthcare Association about what's happening with health care. Technology is involved with that. One of the driving pieces now that folks have come to recognize is the idea of broadband, and that broadband just simply means speed and volume of connectivity. Rural areas, because of the density, as you know, and I'm oversimplifying this, has a problem in funding that.
Correct.
Tell us what the state's role in your mind is in ensuring that, because you live in a rural area and maybe there's more hog houses than there's anything else, why should it be important for folks living in rural areas to have the same access to somebody living in Raleigh?
Well, right now, anytime you want to do anything, it's technologically driven. Even our tractors today have GPS systems and have to have some type of technology motivated. A lot of them are hooked up to try to get internet and grids.
Beyond my ability.
And so you know, it's in everything you do. The disadvantages that we have in rural North Carolina is here it is. We're at a point now to where every school in our state has internet access, wireless internet access. Should have wireless internet access, if not internet access overall. You should give a kid a laptop, works on it at school, and then goes home. Can't do the homework because it doesn't have access. So trying to start a small business in rural North Carolina, great idea, great opportunity. You don't have access. A proper working environment is not showing up at McDonald's and trying to get that's not the proper education and working environment. So it all starts with access. So we've developed programs on the GREAT Act is one, looking at grants where we can come into some of these underserved and rural areas and help communities put in the infrastructure. Working with our telecom friends to look at ways to outside the box thinking on ways to reach out and get access. I'll give you one thing we're working on now is as we're doing our highway construction and purchasing right-of-way with Department of Transportation, can we look at doing right-of-way. Also, when we're building roads and right-of-way, can we lay fiber that can actually go out into some of these rural areas where they can hook on? All sorts of ways to do this. Can we work with companies and provide grants for these companies to come in and hook adapters on cell phone towers currently? Can we do that one to do internet access? So all sorts of ideas are going through the General Assembly. There was a bill that was before us now, trying to work with some of our municipalities to do that one. That can be kind of risky, because what you don't want to do is put a city or a town in a position where they're going to fail trying to offer internet, and that has happened. Unfortunately, we see it more than often. So we don't want to put our cities in a situation where, frankly, they're going to be set up for failure. We don't want to do that, because the goal is to get access. So the programs, doing legislation that prevents barriers to allow our telecom companies to explore these areas. These are all things we're working at. We're always open to ideas. We're always open to new technological advances, because by the time you fix one thing with technology, well, it's normally outdated. They've moved on to something else. So these are all avenues we're looking at. It's a big conversation in Raleigh. It's something that's a major focus on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers. And
do you see kind of unanimity and thought with moving this forward? I mean, does everybody think we've got to make this happen for everyone? It's not one side's pulling this way and that.
No. Of course, everybody has different ways on what they want to see it done. But the effort is as a unified body, both House and Senate, how can we move this forward? Because it is one of the top 2 or 3 issues that we're facing here in the state.
One of the things that I know as part of this discussion too is Elon Musk and Amazon and some other heavyweights have been shooting a lot of satellites up, saying this is going to be the answer to a lot of the connectivity needs. What's your sense on that? Are you hearing anything on that?
I'm not as technology savvy as some of my counterparts. That's one of the things about when you bring 120 people from 120 different backgrounds to serve in the House. We have some folks that are really technologically savvy. You want to talk about agriculture, you want to talk about military, I'm your guy.
I'm that one.
But we have a lot of those folks working on that already. We're open to any opportunity that we have. Anybody willing to work with us, anybody willing to look at new ways that we can in government, a lot of times it's about removing barriers.
Exactly.
So how can we remove these barriers to get access where it's needed?
And allow, in many cases, allow business to operate.
Business does it better than government. So we want to make sure that business is in the forefront. And if we can remove those barriers, if we can offer state-supported grants to help them, that's what we want to do.
Well, I got a big pig list here, as you just mentioned and pointed out. You're on basically everything up there, but one of those committees that it was in the news a while back, didn't get a lot of run. You know how news cycles are now, it's like 24, 48 hours and it's something else. But one of the blips was about alcohol beverage control. They were looking at the possibility of kind of scaling that back and just allowing alcohol to be sold in grocery stores and so forth. It's done in many places throughout the country. Do you see that happening in North Carolina?
So I don't see privatization right now, and when I talk about privatization, I'm talking about what you're seeing in other states where you go and there's a liquor store here, a liquor store. You know, I'm not talking about that type of privatization. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But what I do see happening, and what's currently happening, is modernization of our alcohol laws. You know, some of our laws haven't been changed since Prohibition. And so going through that, especially with what you're seeing now with the unreal movement of breweries across the state. You know, we had some really strict guidelines in place that prevented those small businesses, 'cause that's what they are, small businesses from flourishing. We worked with that, and you've seen those pop up everywhere. Now we're seeing an influx in distilleries, and so how we're able to do that, so we've had to modify some laws to allow those businesses to flourish. I believe it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago was the first time in our state since Prohibition a bottle of alcohol was actually sold outside of the ABC system. Legally.
Yeah, that's it, probably in Johnson County. Remember, Johnson County's got that reputation.
But you know, that was very interesting to watch. I'll give you a prime example. Top of the Hill Distillery in Chapel Hill had been working on products, and you know, to be able, the owner Scott Maitland called me and said, look, when this legislation passed, I was able to hire 2 people within the first week. Just because of the demand. So watching these distilleries come on board, of course, people have seen the wineries and what that's happened. So we want to be able to remove barriers and let these businesses grow. Also, we just have some outdated guidelines and rules that need to be modified. You saw the They allow the universities to be able to sell alcohol how they see fit at their stadiums and places on campus this year past. So you're going to see a lot of modernization of those, but I do not see you'll see a full-blown privatization anytime soon.
But there's a possibility of that down the road somewhere, given the
movement. There is a movement to that. Trying to get away from the government control and put it back into private sector. There was a bill that was heard in the General Assembly in the House this year that actually talked about privatization and modernization of the system. Some of those provisions in that bill have actually started moving forward. It's an issue that we're going to be discussing as we move on and how to do that, because when you deal with the ABC system here in North Carolina, it's an onion and it's layer by layer by layer. And so how do you do that? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to send a shock through the system, and then the properties that are currently owned by the ABC system and those things start imploding. We don't want that to happen. We want stability in that market.
Because it could be total chaos.
It very well could be. So, but that's why everything's a process.
Let's quickly talk a little bit about energy and public utilities now. That's a pretty important committee. What's going on with that? Because there's a lot of segues with that, with some of the other things we talk about as it relates to communications and everything from broadband right on around.
Well, the good thing here is in North Carolina, because of our regulatory environment, for the most part, energy prices are lower than a lot of other places, and we're very blessed to have that. So we've got to maintain that, because that's attractive for business and industry. You look at the regulatory environment, the tax codes, but on top of that, having lower energy costs in somewhere like California, New York, you're seeing businesses saying, hey, we can move to North Carolina. We've got a better way of life. We've got better cost of living, and then our companies can thrive because of our lower energy costs. So we're continuing doing that one. You have some issues that have come up over the last couple of years. Of course, everybody's aware of the coal ash issue that we faced, and we put legislation and start moving forward with that one and to clean up with that one. Also, unfortunately, we've had 2 major hurricanes come through eastern North Carolina, and there's storm recovery costs that are associated with that. There's a bill put forward to help Duke Energy and our other utilities to be able to try to recoup some of that cost and to move forward and do it in a pragmatic way so it doesn't penalize ratepayers. So we're constantly working through these. On the other energy side, you have the renewable side. Always issues with solar farms and how that affects, frankly, a lot of rural North Carolina. Then one of the issues that I've been working on is on the wind turbine issue. And so you look in the northeastern part of our state, and we do have wind turbines. At the same time, I've got low-level flying routes for our military operations, and if you have 500-foot wind turbines with blades extending from that and low-level flying routes where our military has to train, that's a big issue.
You got to weigh
that's a big issue, and our military is our second largest economic impact in the state.
We're going to take another break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Representative John Bell. We're talking about issues facing the state of North Carolina, facing the communities in North Carolina, and that you need to know about. Stay tuned, caller.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're talking with Representative John Bell, former Scout, former Eagle Scout, formerly from Clinton, North Carolina, Duplin County graduate over there in Duplin County, UNC Wilmington, graduated from there, ended up you gotta like what you do. You gotta say you gotta like what you do.
I thoroughly enjoy it.
And it's always about people. What we were talking about energy and one of those committees, and again pointed out the important thing that in your position, majority leader, you're literally involved in all of the committees that's going on. But one of the things we had a couple of folks on just last week. In fact, we were talking about biogas generation. It was with Dominion Gas. Young man Ryan Childress was with us, and of course you probably remember Craig Westerbeek, Pete Westerbeek's son. Craig was on, and of course Smithfield Foods. They're developing a partnership, and they're actually using methane, generating that gas on hog farms with the idea, and doing this seems to have some practical sense of a renewable source that actually can work, which is basically purifying that, putting it right back in the pipeline, using it for natural gas. So it takes away the need for wind. It takes away the need, a cloudy day, you don't have sun. Is this something that, and it may be, you probably, as you said a while ago, you might know a little bit about it. I do, simply because I've talked to these folks, but that seems to be something that would have some practical sense, not only for regeneration of energy, but for applications that certainly in your district and in eastern North Carolina, we've got the resources if we could get that done.
Yeah, and there's opportunities there, not just on the agriculture side, to look at ways we can, anything we can do to enhance and promote and expand our agriculture industry is huge for our area. Of course, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, the plan for it coming through is a game changer, not just for business in general, but for our agriculture industry is huge. Unfortunately, because we do not have some of this access right now, we've actually lost businesses that maybe want to come to our area because of that access. So getting that access is key to our economic survival here in the East.
One of the things I wanted to touch on, and I know this is, we just talked about a lot of things that's going on in the legislature. You hear a lot of noise and activity outside. I've got to mention this because it's on the top burner with the noise and activity going on outside, and that's the issue with gun control. Are we going anywhere in the legislature with anything related to, quote, gun control or permits?
There's a number of bills that have been filed on both sides of the issue. This is just me personally. I hate it that when we have an issue that's happened in El Paso and in Ohio, that instead of actually saying, hey, these families suffered a horrific loss and this is a horrible incident happening in the community, we go right to the political talking points.
Blame game.
The blame game. Unfortunately, bad people are going to do bad things, and we have laws in place that if used correctly, can actually prevent some of these issues from happening. We've seen strict gun laws in places like Chicago. That doesn't work. But what we need to do as a community is that when you see somebody that is mentally unstable or having some mental issues, just like what happened in these two instances, don't be afraid to talk about it. Reach out to law enforcement, may identify, and let the authorities do. But we already have laws in place that I think are good if they're used.
We've switched to another subject. I'm going to try to get as many in as I can while I've got you here. When we look at the disaster we had with Florence, you alluded to that a while ago, and of course you're involved with that committee as well. How are we, I'm not going to say prepared, but how are we ready now compared to 12 months ago? Are we in better shape to be able to respond to? Also, have we done anything that would be more of a preventative nature? Like, for example, one of the things that was brought to my attention in one of our discussions was the idea of clearing the streams and rivers out so water could get out of here and make sure the aquifers are accessible so things can happen. What, in your opinion, have we done enough? Is there something else we need to do?
So the state as a whole, overall, as far as state hard dollars, has put over $1.2 billion in disaster cleanup. People tend to forget that we had Hurricane Matthew. As Hurricane Matthew was going on, eastern North Carolina was underwater. Western North Carolina was on fire.
That's right.
With the forest fires. Then we turn around and we have Hurricane Florence by the time we could even start recovering from Hurricane Matthew. And a lot of these people got hit twice. So then you have Hurricane Florence come on top of that. Actually, at the time, myself and Senator Jackson and others were sitting and negotiating the disaster relief piece with Hurricane Florence. Tropical Storm Michael's coming through. We're honestly in the room doing this as that's coming through. We've been hit hard by natural disasters over the last couple of years. Our state does a good job in preparing during the storm, immediately after the storm. Not so good on long-term recovery, and I've been a big advocate in pushing those federal dollars out from the governor's administration and some of the holdups that are going on. What we're in the process now is doing exactly what you just talked about. Can we clean up our ditches? Can we clean up our streams? Can we work with our federal partners to come in and dredge some of our areas like the Noose and to be able to move this water? Basically, it's flood proofing or being resistant. These people that are in flood-prone areas, can we get them moved up to higher ground so we don't have the significant property losses? Even on the transportation side, or are we building our roads up to a standard in flood-prone areas that can actually sustain that? Interstate 40 was flooded. Well, during Hurricane Florence, what happened is it actually cut Wilmington off from everybody else. Places here in Sampson County were cut off. In Duplin County, you look in Wayne County. I use example. Wayne County is like a mitt, a mitt. So when the Neuse River cuts across the middle, when it floods, you actually separate Wayne County into two different. It becomes two different counties. Same thing in Lenore County. It becomes two different counties. So can we build roads as we're going through the process? Yes, it's going to be more expensive, but in the long run, can we build them to a standard so whether it's 500, 600 year floodplain? One of the things that we learned after Hurricane Matthew that was a benefit to us in Hurricane Florence was the pre-staging of FEMA assets. We work with our federal partners and also our state emergency management to pre-position these assets before the storm even moved in. I don't encourage people to run out there and look, but if you happen to be in the area, especially around a disaster, the Global Transport was the hub for the East. And even before Hurricane Florence hit, they were already pre-staging assets, so there was no delay time in deploying these assets. After Hurricane Matthew, there were 24, 40 hours to wait. People were actually moving, assets were moving into disaster areas such as Craven County and Carteret County and Onslow County actually towards the end of the storm. We were already moving those assets into play. So we have learned every storm is different though. In Hurricane Matthew, I actually got caught in Hurricane Matthew trying to get home and I saw water run uphill. Never seen that happen before, but it was so much rain I saw water run uphill. Hurricane Florence, I saw the Neuse River flow backwards. Never seen that happen before, but it was so much storm surge coming that was blowing up all the way into Seven Springs. I mean, can you imagine how far that push is? So you learn things from every different storm, but North Carolina's in good shape. I feel like we're prepared. What we've got to get better is a long-term recovery to help the victims of those storms get back to where they were before the storm.
Is the leadership role in that recovery, is that something you see as federal? Is it a state entity that does that? Is it local emergency planning committees?
All the above. All the above. I'll just say from the local side, I deal with a bunch of different counties. In Wayne County, where I live, we've been through this before. Lenore County, I represent, we've been through this before. This was something new in Craven County, something new in Carteret County. They're going to take the lessons they learned, and they'll be better prepared next time. From the state side, we've been able to appropriate funds through Golden Leaf and other entities to rebuild a lot of the infrastructure that as a matter of fact, before I walked in today, I was on the phone with the folks at Golden Leaf trying to work out a grant because I just found out that one of the state partnership for children offices, the foundation was washed out. So we're still looking at replacing those. Where we fall short is on the state side through the governor's administration, in which we set up the Department of Resiliency. That has to get better at streamlining the process to get people help, but also get the federal dollars out.
You mentioned one thing I want to touch on, and we're getting kind of close to our time end here, is roads and ditches. And you said ditches words, which you got to be from a rural area to say ditches. So, but roads and ditches is what I hear a lot from my agriculture friends and folks, and I guess I'm one of those people because I live in the country. But you see a lot of wear on our roads, our rural roads. Those roads are being paid for, and I remind people that they talk about the big trucks on the roads. Those farmers are paying big tax dollars, and those integrators are paying big tax dollars for that. Do you see at some point in time the legislature says, look, we got to do something with our rural roads in North Carolina? We
do. So one of the things we looked at is a couple of years ago, we did something that was key. For years, the General Assembly have been able to tap into the Highway Trust Fund and pull money and put into the general fund to balance their budgets. We stopped that. So now when you pay a gas tax in North Carolina, all that money is going into our Highway Trust Fund. But the problem is it was depleted for so long, now we're having a hard time building it up, and things are more expensive today than they were 20 years ago. So the plan our Transportation Committee has put in place is to influx that with cash, continue to collect the gas tax, cap it, so you're not paying exorbitant amounts. That's one of the reasons because our gas tax is capped, and also you're looking at a thriving economy, gas prices are reasonable. So what we want to do is be able to pave every road in the state of North Carolina every 13 years. That's the goal. But the problem we have is that North Carolina maintains more roads than anybody in the country.
Exactly.
So we have a tremendous amount of state maintained roads. We've got to clean up our ditches. We've got to do our infrastructure. Part of the problem is technology we talked about. Instead of back in the day we used to bush hog it
Yeah,
by hand, bush hog and haul it out.
And those ditches were cleaned out.
Now you come and cut over it and it falls in the ditch and drains.
Yeah,
So we've got some issues there, but transportation is a priority. The good thing I would tell you is that you're seeing paving happen all across our state. Unfortunately and fortunately, our new motto, our new state symbol is the orange barrel. You're going to see a lot of those orange cones and barrels across the state because we've got to get our infrastructure back to being the best in the country.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us. We kind of come to a quick close here.
Thank you for your time.
The information that we talked about and things that you're doing in the legislature, again, I want to thank you for doing that. And come back again and keep us up to date.
Enjoyed it, but it's a team effort. We've got a lot of good folks in Eastern North Carolina helping.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to seeing you again next week on We Should Know. And as always, when we go to close, we like to tell you and remind you, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.